The kitchen phone rang, sharp and insistent. Pamela crossed the tiled floor, her heart inexplicably heavy.
Mrs. Hartley, the biopsy results came back. I am afraid it's stage 2 ovarian cancer.
Stage 2. What does that mean? Is there a chance I can beat this?
It's aggressive but treatable. The recommended specialist protocol comes with an out-of-pocket estimate of $180,000 after insurance.
Pamela's hand tightened on the receiver, knuckles whitening as the number echoed in her mind.
$180,000. The words pulsed in her skull like a death sentence. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. I'll have to think about it. I'll call you back.
She hung up and stood motionless, staring at the wall. The kitchen clock ticked loudly.
David. She had to call her son. He would help. He had to.
Her finger found his contact and pressed dial. The line rang once, then again.
Mom, I am in a meeting. Is this urgent?
David, I have cancer. Ovarian. Stage 2. It's serious.
Silence stretched on the other end, a cold void. Then David's voice came back, tight as a wire.
Mom, I am sorry. But financially, the startup is cratering unless we close this funding round. I can't liquidate anything.
They say $180,000. I don't have it, David.
I wish I could help. I really do, but I can't. I have to go. My investors are waiting.
He hung up before she could answer. The line went dead in her ear.
He hung up on me.
She stood motionless. The receiver still pressed to her ear, then lowered it slowly. Her arm trembling, she walked to the kitchen table and sat heavily, the weight of the silence crushing her chest. The kitchen dimmed as afternoon slid into dusk. Pamela didn't move to turn on the lights. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, untouched. Her eyes drifted to the windowsill, where a silver frame held a photograph of her late sister.
6 years. 6 years since I lost you.
Sandra had died of pancreatic cancer at 64, only 5 months after the diagnosis. Pamela remembered the last time she saw Sandra conscious, a week before the end. Sandra had squeezed her hand, her voice papery but fierce.
Whatever happens, I've got you. Don't you forget that.
Pamela had thought it was just a dying woman's comfort. Now, in the hollow kitchen, she wondered. She reached out and touched the frame, the glass cool under her fingertip.
I miss you, Sand.
Flashback. 2 little girls ran through a meadow of goldenrod, sun catching their hair, laughter spilling into the wind. Sandra, 2 years older, always slowed her sprint so Pamela could catch up, never once letting her feel left behind.
Come on, P. You can't let the bugs win.
As teenagers, Sandra taught Pamela how to drive a stick shift in a beat-up pickup, patient even when the engine stalled again and again. When Pamela's marriage fell apart, Sandra arrived with a suitcase and stayed 3 weeks, saying nothing, just being there. She never said, "I told you so." She just made tea and sat in silence until Pamela could talk. Sandra worked as a senior accountant at a small biotech firm. She drove a used sedan and never mentioned money. When the biotech was bought out, some employees got stock options. Sandra never mentioned it to anyone. Pamela learned about the options years later in an offhand comment. Sandra just shrugged it off back in the dim kitchen. Pamela stared at the photograph. The ache of missing her sister was now laced with a strange, quiet curiosity. That curiosity pulled Pamela deeper into memory. The day Sandra learned she was dying.
It's pancreatic. They caught it late. I am not going to fight it with heroics.
She fought it with paperwork instead, in those final months. Pamela didn't know that then. In the hospital, a week before the end, Sandra's thin hand held Pamela's. Her eyes were still clear.
I made some arrangements. If you ever need help, really need it, something is in place.
Pamela had assumed life insurance or a small savings account. She didn't press for details. Sandra passed on a Tuesday morning. Pamela was holding her hand, the world going quiet. Back in the present, the kitchen felt colder. Pamela's gaze fell on an old photo album on the shelf. She pulled the album down onto her lap, and a small yellowed note fluttered out from between the pages. 4P, just in case. Love, S. Pamela stared at the note. Just in case. Her pulse quickened. The wall phone rang, shattering the silence. She nearly dropped the album. She crossed the kitchen and picked up the receiver, her voice unsteady.
Hello?
Mrs. Hartley, my name is Thomas Whitfield. I am an estate attorney in Cincinnati, handling a trust established by your late sister, Sandra Vance.
Pamela's grip on the phone tightened.
I apologize for not reaching out sooner. I was only just notified by your oncology billing department about a claim. This trust was set up precisely for such an event.
Oncology billing? Sandra knew?
Your sister spent her last 8 months ensuring you'd never be alone in a health crisis. The trust is funded with $740,000, intended solely for your uncovered medical expenses.
The kitchen tilted. Pamela sank onto a stool, the note still clutched in her other hand.
The trust was funded entirely by a quiet stock options windfall from the biotech firm where she worked. She cashed them out and directed every cent into this trust. 6 years ago, she came to my office. I drafted the documents. She never wanted anyone to know, not even you. The purpose is simple. Any medical expense you incur that insurance doesn't fully cover, the trust pays directly to the provider. No questions asked.
Pamela's chest heaved. The note in her hand, just in case, suddenly made terrible, beautiful sense.
She knew I might not have enough. She knew David might not.
She didn't know specifics. She just wanted to be certain you'd never face a health battle alone financially.
Tears slid down Pamela's cheeks, but a trembling smile formed.
There is also a letter. She wrote it for you. I will send it immediately.
He told her the trust would cover the full $180,000. Everything could begin within days. Pamela whispered, "Thank you, Sandra," as Thomas promised to fax the insurance authorization immediately.
If you'll allow me, I'd like to read you a small part of her letter.
Pamela nodded, forgetting he couldn't see her, and pressed the phone tighter against her ear. Thomas's voice softened, taking on Sandra's words from the page. "Dearest Pamela, if you are hearing from Thomas, something hard is happening. I wish I could be there to hold your hand. Since I can't, I did the next best thing. I didn't do this for gratitude. I did it because the day we lost Mom, I promised I'd never let you face something terrifying alone." Pamela's sobs were quiet, convulsive. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "I wanted to be the one who showed up, even after I was gone. That's what sisters do."
There is more, but I'll send the original for you to read privately.
Pamela whispered thanks and hung up. She sat alone. But for the first time in days, she didn't feel entirely alone. Within 10 days, the oncology center had been paid in full. Pamela sat in a recliner, an IV drip in her arm. The infusion room was quiet, other patients reading or dozing. A nurse adjusted the drip rate. Pamela felt the cold saline, the first push of chemo. She closed her eyes and thought of Sandra.
You bought me this time. Every hour in that chair is because of you.
The weeks blurred into cycles of nausea, bone-deep fatigue, and hair that came out in clumps. One morning, she removed her silk scarf in front of the bathroom mirror. Her scalp was visible, hair falling in patches. She didn't weep then. She retrieved Sandra's photo and set it on the bathroom shelf. Padded envelope arrived from Thomas. Inside, the original letter, handwritten on cream paper, tied with a blue ribbon. Pamela set it on the kitchen table, but didn't open it. She wasn't ready to read Sandra's last words. She would wait until she had the strength to absorb whatever Sandra had written. On a still afternoon, months into recovery, Pamela sat at the kitchen table and untied the blue ribbon. The letter was 7 pages long, in Sandra's careful handwriting. Pamela read slowly. Sandra wrote of her diagnosis, of establishing the trust in secrecy, of refusing to burden Pamela. You'd have told me to spend it on myself. But I was past saving. You deserved a clean fight, with no bills. Pamela's eyes filled. She continued reading. We don't always get to choose the family that shows up, but sometimes we get to be that family. You were that for me. Let me be that now. Pamela folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest.
You were the family that showed up, not David. You.
She did not call David that night. She did not call anyone. She placed the letter under the silver frame with Sandra's photo, where it would stay. Week 16 brought a text from David. He'd be in town, could spare a few hours. She set out sandwiches and tea, but when he arrived, he barely glanced at the plate. He sat scrolling his phone at the kitchen table.
You look okay. Considering, are they treating you all right?
They are, David. Everything's being handled.
He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't ask about bills. Instead, he launched into talk of a new investor and his startup Series B. She listened, her silk scarf soft against her bare scalp, and watched his eyes slide past hers to the window. After 2 hours, he checked his watch. I should get back, he said. Traffic on? I-5. At the door, he paused, not quite turning. Let me know if anything changes. She nodded, and he was gone. The hum of his rental car faded down the street. Pamela returned to the kitchen. She touched the drawer where Sandra's letter lay, and she didn't cry. The final infusion. Autumn gold light streamed through the window as Pamela sat in the recliner, her hair gone, body frail. But her eyes held a clarity missing for months. The trust paid every invoice. She never saw a bill. It was as if the cancer cost nothing but comfort. Now, the hardest wait began. A scan that would reveal whether any trace of the disease remained. She circled the date on her kitchen calendar. October 17th, the exact day Sandra had died 6 years earlier. The morning of the scan, she fastened Sandra's pearl earrings, the only keepsake she had besides the letter. She lay in the scanner, closed her eyes, the clicks and hums loud in her ears.
Whatever the result, I got this extra year because of you.
Afterward, she went home and watered the peonies she had planted the year Sandra died. The phone rang at 4:17 p.m.
Pamela, the scans came back. There's no evidence of disease. You are in remission.
She didn't speak. The word remission hovered in the air, bright and impossible.
Thank you. Thank you, doctor.
She hung up and pressed her palms into the mattress, rocking slightly on the edge of her bed. The tears came, not violent, but a release, a flooding out of months of terror and poison. She looked at the calendar. October 17th, the day Sandra died. The date was no longer just a loss. She rose, still in her robe, and went to the vase of white peonies in the living room. She chose one perfect bloom, stems wrapped in damp paper towel, placed it in a small bag. Within an hour, she was driving the familiar road to the cemetery, the peony on the passenger seat. The fall air was crisp. She drove in silence, the weight of the past year lifting with every mile. The cemetery was quiet, ancient oaks shedding golden leaves. Pamela found Sandra's headstone easily. She knelt on the damp grass, ignoring the cold, and laid the white peony at the base of the stone.
Hi, Sand. I made it. The scan was clean.
She traced the carved letters of Sandra's name with a fingertip, feeling the roughness of the stone. After a long silence, she reached into her bag and withdrew the letter, the blue ribbon long gone. She unfolded it carefully, the creases worn from many readings over the months.
We don't always get to choose the family that shows up, but sometimes we get to be that family for someone else.
She paused, then added her own words, steady and clear.
You were that family, Sand, and I am going to be that family too, even if it's just for me.
She sat there for an hour, the peony glowing white against the gray stone, and for the first time in years she felt Sandra beside her. Spring softened into summer. Pamela's white hair grew back, soft as dandelion fluff, curling around her ears. One afternoon, the phone rang. It was David, his voice hurried and without warmth.
I heard you had a trust set up by Aunt Sandra. Is that true?
He'd learned about it from a family friend at the oncology billing office, a breach that angered her, but she stayed calm. That weekend, he showed up unannounced, wearing a blazer, carrying the tense energy of a pitch meeting.
So the trust is real? 740,000? Mom, that changes everything.
It changed my everything, yes. It covered the treatment that saved my life.
I could really use a piece of that. The startup's on the brink. If you just added me as a beneficiary, even a small percentage.
Pamela looked at her son, the same boy who had once promised he would always take care of her.
He doesn't understand what that money means, who it represents. David, the trust is not a family fund. It is a healthcare trust, set up for one purpose, to cover my medical expenses that insurance won't.
But you are in remission now. You don't need it all. I am your son.
You are my son, and I love you. But your aunt spent her last months creating this for me. For this exact reason, I will not dilute that.
David's jaw tightened. He looked at her as if seeing a stranger.
So that's it? You get a windfall and I get nothing?
You got a mother who survived. That's not nothing.
He had no answer to that. He grabbed his keys and left without a hug. Pamela watched from the window as his car pulled away. She didn't cry. She went to the drawer and touched the letter, the line she had not told him echoing silently. She would keep Sandra's most private words exactly where they belonged, with her. The seasons turned. Pamela's garden came back lush and full, the peony bushes heavy with blooms each spring. She spent her mornings weeding, her afternoons reading on the porch, the days quiet and unremarkable. Every few months, a statement from the trust arrived. A zero balance. The trust paid without fail. The only money she spent from her own account was for the white peonies she placed on Sandra's grave each autumn. Inside the house, the letter lay under Sandra's photo. Pamela read it when she needed to hear her sister's voice. She never showed the letter to David, never told him the exact words. There was a mercy in that, she believed. He didn't need the weight of knowing how thoroughly he'd been replaced by an act of pure love. One evening, she sat on the porch and watched the sunset, the trust and the letter forever linked in her mind. The peony on the side table shed one petal, and she didn't rush to catch it. She had learned that some things are strongest when they're not caught, when they simply happen. Sandra Vance died of pancreatic cancer in 2019, at the age of 64. She left behind a trust no one knew about, a letter no one else read, and a sister who would outlive her because of it. David never saw the letter. He never knew the full depth of what his aunt had done. But Pamela knew. Every single day, in the quietest hours, she knew. The trust would endure for the rest of her life. A silent partner she never asked for, but could not have survived without. The peony on the table was replaced each week. Each bloom, a small act of memory. On the kitchen counter, the trust document and Sandra's letter lay side by side, never to be separated. And in the end, the only voice that lingered was Sandra's, written on a page that yellowed with time, but never lost its power. We don't always get to choose the family that shows up, but sometimes we get to be that family for someone else. The frame faded, but the words stayed. Pamela in her garden, early morning light catching the silver of her hair as she knelt among the peonies. She lifted a white peony bloom to her nose, closed her eyes, and smiled. On the side table, a cup of chamomile tea steamed beside the worn letter, its creases soft from years of reading. She didn't need to read it anymore. She had memorized every word, every pause, every promise. The trust paid for quarterly scans, each one clean, a silent confirmation that Sandra's gift endured. She visited the grave 4 times a year, always with a peony, always with the same quiet thanks, in the quiet of her home. The only conversations that mattered were the ones she had with her sister, in the space between thought and gratitude. Across town, David's startup eventually folded. He called sometimes, conversations still shallow, but she no longer waited for more. But Pamela had made peace with that. She had been loved in a way most people never are, completely secretly, forever, and that was enough. When Pamela passed, years from now, the trust would dissolve as planned, its remaining funds designated to cancer research. But that was a future she didn't dwell on. The present was a gift. In the end, the truest family isn't always biological. Sometimes, it's the one who prepares a lifeboat in secret, then waits in the dark for the distress call. Sandra responded 6 years after her own death, and her answer was yes. Every bill, every treatment, every breath. We don't always get to choose the family that shows up, but sometimes we get to be that family for someone else. The white peony glowed in the lamplight, and the story, like the trust, was already written, not for an audience, but for one person. Thank you for listening until the end. If this story touched you, share it with someone who has been that family for you. The camera drew back slowly. The room widened. The trust document, the letter, the white peony stayed, still eternal. The afternoon light held them. Outside, a window showed autumn leaves drifting past, gold against the glass. Inside, no one was visible. Yet the room was full of presence, of gratitude, of a sister's voice that wouldn't fade. A final, whispered line from the letter seemed to echo in the warm silence. I wanted to be the one who showed up, even after I was gone. She was. The frame began to brighten, the colors running into gentle white. Then it faded to black. The last thing visible, a single peony petal. Silence. The end. For more stories that celebrate the quiet, hidden ways love shows up, subscribe, and share. Sometimes the most powerful gifts are the ones we never saw coming. Until next time, fade to black. Silence. A single peony petal falls. Weightless in the dark. The screen rests. Thank you. Credits roll. End.